There has been a lot of talking about StopKillingGames recently, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. Not regarding pirate software, but more around the arguments themselves. Now, this video is being made between work and developing my own games, so time's limited. To preface this, the points are a synopsis collated with the help of AI, and I won't have time to find the clips, so if there are points in here that are untrue, misunderstood, let me know in comments. I can do another thing like this, I just can't do loads of editing and messing about that way, so this will have to do. I'm also not a network engineer, cloud infrastructure expert. There are some ideas presented here like cloud modularity, DRM removal, or community hosting. I acknowledge that these are aspirational. They aren't technical blueprints, but examples of what could be possible when studios approach development with long-term preservation in mind. These ideas fall under the notion of what's reasonably practicable, not mandates for every studio, but guiding principles for better standards. Now, I can't debate technical implementation or provide a blueprint on how games should go about preservation. Obviously, legislation would change the game landscape, but I can examine the core issues, explain why I believe this change will be an ultimate positive, and why I feel many of the negatives are more speculative rather than factual. First things first, let's be clear on what StopKillingGames is. The StopKillingGames initiative is about improving consumer standards in video games. That's it. Simple. Yes, the movement could introduce legal requirements, and that could create limitations, but a point I really feel needs to be remembered throughout this whole discussion is limitation breeds innovation, not stagnation. Things are stagnant now. There's a set way to do stuff, and that is the way. Introducing new constraints could force a change on how we work, encouraging new infrastructure, and also supports long-term health for both games and their communities. That shouldn't be seen as a negative. First synopsis, claim 1. Developers shouldn't be forced to support games forever. That would kill innovation and financially strain studios. StopKillingGames movement doesn't demand infinite support. It's been said, I'll say it again. Gamers understand that games, especially online ones, can't be maintained forever. What we do expect is that when official support ends and players and communities aren't left with nothing. Right now, many games are intentionally designed to die when servers go offline or DRM fails. That's not about cost, it's control. We want developers to build in off-ramps and offline modes, server binaries, or tools so the community can preserve and enjoy the game when the official support ends. Innovation doesn't die because of limits, it often thrives within them. Making games with future preservation in mind could lead to more modular, transparent and resilient designs, not less creativity. Yes, cloud-based systems are heavily embedded. Developers face real hurdles with third-party APIs and data dependencies. But that doesn't mean end-of-life solutions are impossible. Difficult? Yeah. Aspirational? Definitely. But that's what innovation's for. Solving hard problems. This initiative can encourage developers to explore modular approaches, documentation or hooks that make long-term support or community adaptation more feasible. As long as the current framework remains unchanged, developers retain total power, and that can be used to push players towards sequels or re-releases. We should strive to shift the balance. We shouldn't just let status quo remain the norm if improvement is possible. And that's the key. Is improvement possible. Developers already talk about the financial strain, so yes, there is that aspect, but often this is in terms of monetization strategies. They overspend, they sign contracts that they need because of the current norms, but they don't talk about it to talk about what's sustainable. This initiative could re-inject the space with creative thinking that's focused on longevity and player respect. Point 2. Consumer protection laws would place huge burdens on indie studios who can't afford long-term support or compliance. Well, that's a valid concern, but if time has taught us anything, it's that small developers are often the most creative. While large-scale multiplayer games require large budgets, that's not where most indie success stories happen. In fact, the indie boom has largely been built on single-player experiences, the exact kind of games that are mostly unaffected by the proposed changes. These developers would still have a path to success, whether protections increase or not. Meanwhile, larger developers who do have resources can take the lead on establishing best practices, releasing official offline modes, modular server tools, or sandbox versions when support ends. Once those systems are in place, smaller devs can adapt and benefit from them. Just like they do with open source engines, community tools, and shared code bases now. We may even see new infrastructure emerge. Cloud services designed specifically for community hosting. Networking solutions that are designed to be unplugged and modded safely. And that may actually help indie developers as well for the same thing. The risks are real, yes, but so is the cost of doing nothing. Consumers make up the majority of this market. If protection shifts slightly in their favour, that's not unfair. That's rebalancing. Claim 3. Games are live software and can't be treated like physical products. You can't expect them to last forever or apply traditional consumer protections. You're right. Games are not physical products. That's true. But neither is Adobe Creative Cloud, antivirus software, subscription services. Yeah, there is nuance here, but to equally dismiss the entire Stop Killing Games initiative on that they're not physical products also ignores how other digital services already handle similar issues. All of those platforms come with clear terms, time frames, and consumer protections. You know what you're getting, how long for, and what happens when support ends. Games, on the other hand, can vanish overnight. You pay full price, so not a subscription, pay full price, and one day, servers down, DRM revoked, storefront closed. Now, if you don't follow terms and conditions, that's part of the agreement, that bit's stated, but that's not the issue here. Players who haven't breached terms of service may get no warning, no expiration date, no fallback. That's not just bad practice, that's exploitation hiding behind a vague licensing language. If we're going to treat games as licensed software, fine, but be transparent about it. If a game is only playable for a year, say that up front. That level of honesty alone would be a huge step forward, even if it hurt short-term profits. I personally believe this would damage the industry severely, and that's why developers should avoid this route by embracing longer-term preservation. And you are right, that not all games can be preserved equally. We don't expect an MMO to have offline fallback. Just like we wouldn't expect a puzzle game to then host servers just so it's all falling in the same line. but developers should make reasonable efforts to keep games playable, or at least explain why they can't, right? And that's the key phrase here, reasonably practicable. This is what potential legislation would probably hinge on. A flexible standard that takes each game's scope and resources into account. DRM and cloud services and other infrastructure that would be considered under that umbrella, not forced across the board, but assessed case by case. So legislation would enable consumers the right for those cases to be looked at, but not necessarily punishing the parties, dependent on whether or not there's a malicious intent or a technical reason. It's also important to note that laws don't apply retrospectively. Games already released wouldn't be suddenly held accountable to new rules. And even for future releases, there'd be likely a fair buffer. Personally, I'd suggest 3 to 5 years between the law passing and its enforcement, so developers have time to adapt. So if you're developing a game now and you're expecting it to release in the next 3 years and you've kind of already got a rough idea of your infrastructure, maybe you don't have to worry about that. 5 years is a long time to be able to then make those adaptations for both small and large developers for those tools to be created. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about setting better standards for the future. 4. A broken, stripped down skeleton version isn't true preservation. That's not worth it. Now this one sounds like more of a quote. Again, I'm not going to find the clip, but I get the idea around it. Honestly, a skeleton is better than a grave. We've already acknowledged the real challenges: licensing, third-party services, online infrastructure. But even a partial build, a debug mode, a sandbox, or a set of modding tools gives the community a foundation. It gives fans a way forward that doesn't involve risking legal action just to keep a beloved title from disappearing completely. And to clarify, preservation also doesn't mean that developers must release a full source code. That's unreasonable. Or proprietary assets. Again, unreasonable, of course. It simply means leaving something behind, even if it's limited, that respects the time and money players invested. Licensing is complicated, yes, but a practical approach might be allow communities to preserve their games as long as it's strictly non-profit. If someone monetizes a preservation build, then the original rights holder has a clear claim to damages, because now they are profiting. You shouldn't be able to profit off preservation. I agree with that. Possibly to protect both sides, maybe there's a legal registry where preservation communities, particularly large preservation communities, can declare their efforts transparently, and studios can then monitor and collaborate. This isn't about giving up control, it's about creating pathways that prevent total loss for the players. And again, like, these are just suggestions. Stop Killing Games movement isn't about proposing specific legislation. That's the job of lawmakers. But we do need to raise awareness, discuss possibilities, and start treating digital games with the respect we give other mediums. Point 3. Don't know what's up with the weird voices. Weakening or removing DRM will lead to more piracy, especially around launch. Yeah, it might. But it's might doing nothing. The gaming community is already reaching breaking point. Prices are climbing. Games launch being broken. Microtransactions getting worse. And DRM can lock out people who've paid for the game. DRM has a purpose, especially at launch. But as a game reaches end of life, There should always be ways, whether legal, technical or both, to reduce those restrictions. Maybe the law won't demand DRM be removed, but it could encourage studios to consider alternatives as part of their life-ending plan. My point is speculative, that piracy could increase anyway, but so is the fear that piracy will increase with new legislation. What's certain is that gamers are increasingly getting frustrated. This isn't about enabling piracy, but similar with the cloud-based idea, it's worth having a look to see what we can do. And remember, reasonable adjustment will always be a thing. Ultimately, when it comes to end of life, you're not wanting to continue on with the product. So if it can be turned off, you can turn it off. But I know that's not always the case as well. It's complicated. Hence why legislation is important, and these discussions are important to try and get it right for both parties. That's really good. Good. Problem is, I can't see without them. That's my issue. My issue right now isn't any of this. Oh no! Man, they're not broken. Finally, point 6. We don't need laws. The market will correct bad behaviour. Vote where you want it. This argument, if it's been said, weak as shit. Most gamers know it. Consumer protections aren't powerful. The free market only works when there's a massive collective response, and even then it often fails. Mob rule isn't stability. We're not talking about artistic decision or politics either. This isn't DEI or game difficulty. This is real harm. This is real shit. Games disappearing, like, this is to do with games 100%, not preferences or anything like that. I'm not saying they don't have a basis, but this is more important than them. Games disappearing, being bricked, sold under misleading terms. Actual consumer rights. The market didn't stop loot boxes. It didn't stop gacha games. It didn't stop $100 release for early access. Basically, when the game's already ready. You know, it didn't stop microtransactions. It didn't stop any of those things. It normalized them. So what does that tell you? People say vote where you want it, but that fails when 100 players refuse to buy and one whale spends 150 or more in a lot of cases. That's not consumer power, that's exploitation. Now your numbers don't matter at all. The free market can't adjust for the majority of players because it's not built for the majority, it's built for a minority with money. It's time that we stop pretending the market will fix this. It's time to demand accountability and to give protection. So for my closing statement here, let's stop pretending this is complicated. There's complications to it, but the overall decision isn't really that complicated. Stop Killing Games initiative isn't about calling for miracles. It's asking for responsibility for a multi-billion-dollar industry to treat its own legacy and its players with the bare minimum of respect. The counter-arguments, we've heard them. It's too hard, too expensive, too risky. That we should trust the free market even after it failed to stop loot boxes, gacha gambling, DRM, that bricks games, and a deluxe edition that sells you the same game just a few days early. People warn us if we demand accountability, games might get more expensive. They already are. We're paying more getting this, watching our games disappear and being told that that's how it is. That's not a business model, that's digital gaslighting. What we're asking for isn't extreme, it's practical. Transparency, offline modes, server handoffs, reasonably practicable preservation, not perfection. If a studio can't support a game anymore, that's okay, but then step aside and let the community do it. Yes, the legal side's complicated. That's why this initiative isn't writing the law. It's raising awareness, giving a voice to the people who love games enough to fight for their future, to say that games, like films, books and music, deserve an afterlife. It seems the Stop Killing Games is simply asking for better, while the counter-arguments are happy with less. Well, most of us aren't. It's time for change. So, I'll put a link in the description. For those who can, let's make a change. I know I'm nobody, but I do hope this at least gave a bit more grounding in what some of the actual concerns are, which ones are relevant, and kind of some counterpoints to them as to why I feel as though there is no single point to the argument that I think should stop pushing forward. You can disagree, and disagree is a virtue that's dying a lot nowadays, so by all means disagree, but disagree respectfully and don't sign it. But don't also spread propaganda for those that do want change and do think it's a good idea, because the only arguments that are really there that are valid are that we don't know how it'd work. Of course we don't. We don't even know what legislation would be. How can we know how it would work? How can we know how something's going to work that shouldn't work? I have advice that I can give, but it's pointless at this stage. This is to start a discussion, not end it. So why are we arguing amongst ourselves again? That's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, subscribe if you want to. I do game development videos at the minute. If you're not interested in that, don't subscribe. Fine, I'm not bothered.